Hello, in this video we're going to look at buses and groups, creating folder tracks and arranging your session in Reaper. I've got my dank cup of coffee with me. So let's do it. By the way, apparently coffee, caffeine has an effect on hearing. And people with tinnitus, it can make it worse. Just something I've heard. If you know anything more about that, say something in the comments. I don't know. So if you're new to mixing, probably heard about buses. What is a bus? A bus, on a mixing console, you've got all of your channels. And those channels can feed into a bus. You might have 8 or 16 buses. And those buses route then to the master output. The stereo bus, the 2 bus, whatever it is. And it's a way of grouping tracks together. The practical use is you could turn down the bus and turn down all those instruments, or you could process them all together. So you could stick a compressor on there, which is what I like to do, and have all of that group of instruments go through the same compressor and kind of get some glue and be glued together as one coherent piece. If you've got like 8 vocal tracks, you can put those vocal tracks together and, process them all together, turn them up and down together in the mix and that kind of thing. So that's basically what a bus is. So this is Harrison Mix Bus. Harrison Mix Bus is a DAW that emulates working on a Harrison or SSL mixing console. And so they have buses here for you to route to. And they're already set up in a way that mixing consoles work. So I've got all of my channels and each track is routed to a different bus here. But in Reaper, if we want to do that, we've got to build it ourselves. By the way, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. At the end of the day, the listener has no idea what DAW you've used, whether you know what a bus is, whether you use compression here, or the user doesn't know or care about any of that stuff. So just remember that. Don't overthink this stuff. I'm just going to show you how I set up a session. So in Reaper, you have folders. So folders, a bunch of tracks here, and I can have a parent track, and I can select tracks and I can drag it up here, see this folder icon, and create a folder. What happens here is these tracks within the folder are no longer being routed to the master output. Let me show the master track in the track control panel. So show master track. This is the master track. Now these children are routed up to the parent folder, and the parent folder is now sending to the master. So if I were to mute this folder, everything within the folder will be muted. Okay. Now this could be my drums, and I can have my drums all in one group, and then I could have my bass. Say I've got 2 bass DI tracks or something like that. Add it there. And then I've got some guitars. And then I've got some vocals. Before I go any further, someone in the comments of one of my previous videos pointed out that you can do auto coloring. So you're going to need the SWS extension. Now I do recommend you watch my Ultimate Beginner's Reaper Setup Guide. If you want your Reaper to look like mine and behave like mine, then follow that. Auto color. And I've gone ahead and set these up. I actually already had this one there. That's why in that video you saw that I colored the parent, and all of the child tracks automatically inherited that color from the parent. That's because I already had this rule in place. So to add a rule, you just add a rule. What should I call it? Funky. Right? If it's called that, it's going to get a color, set color. Green. Add custom colors, or you can click that icon down there. Okay. Now, if I create a track, I call it funky. It's green automatically. That's why you saw me type guitars, it became orange. I type bass, it became red. And because of this rule, so for this one, I created a rule, right click, and I chose children. And the color that a child track will get will be the parent's color. So this rule, number one, is essentially saying if you are a track that belongs to a folder, I want you to inherit the color of the parent, whatever color that is. So I can create more tracks. Right click, drag them into the folder, and it becomes green for me. And that is auto coloring in Reaper. And thank you very much for whoever made that comment for reminding me about that. So that's folders. Now these folders, you could call them buses. They're essentially buses now because these child tracks are no longer sending their signal or routing their output to the master. They're routing up to their parent, and it's the parent that is routing up to the master. And I can even have a track here called my pre-master, right? And I can select all my tracks and I can put them inside there. And now I have folders within folders, so nested folders. It all works the same way. So these children tracks, they are sending to their parent folder, drums in this case, and drums is sending to pre-master, and pre-master is now sending to the master. So far we've talked about buses, why you might want to use them, just to remind you. So now I can put, say, BX Townhouse bus compressor, and I can put one on my bass, one on my guitars, one on my vocals. Let's say, okay, this is a good use of it. So let's say I've got these two tracks here and I've got a snare with two mics on it. So I have snare top, so a top mic, and snare bottom. So typical situation where you'll mic a snare up with a mic on the top and mic on the bottom. Okay, that's you see that a lot, right? And I want to process them together. I can right click, move tracks into a folder. So now they are in a folder within a folder, and I've got a mini bus, and I can call this my snare bus. So now I can process both the snare mic, top mic, and the snare bottom mic as one thing. Okay, so that's a good use for a folder within a folder, right? And that's a bus. If you're with me still so far, then you've done it. You've set up buses. You have a drums bus, you have a bass bus, you have a guitars bus, and Reaper is handling the routing because you've put them inside folders. I sometimes do this if it's just a quick mix, or if it's quite a simple track, not too complex, and I just want to mix it down. This is fine. You could stop here and work like this, no problem. But I like to build something a bit more complex. I like to just create my own buses, essentially. So let's take these. In this folder, I'm going to make dedicated bus tracks. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 drums bus, bass, bus, and I'm going to have them under this mix bus. Don't think you have to group these logically by instrument or source. It all depends on your track and the genre and the sound you're going for. You could have a bus called the bass bus, and you could have your kick and your bass instrument going to a bus that you've called the bass bus, because you might want to process just the bass in a certain way, quite commonly done in like EDM or electronic music, for example, where bass is important, right? Or you may want to keep things really simple and have like 3 buses where you've just got the bass bus or your bass elements going to a bus. Then you've got your rhythm elements or your mid-range elements like a rhythm guitar, and then you've got leads. So 3 buses. And that you might like doing that. Most of the time, I just go by the vague instrument group, but sometimes I'm mixing something that's like a bit weird. It's not just drums, bass, guitar. You know, it's something weird, right? Where I might have like just misc, right? And I can have that going to a bus, or like effects, as in sound effects or whatever. That's why I'm about to show you what I do, because folders are one thing and buses are another. To me, folders in Reaper is how you logically group the actual instruments, like all the drums in the drums folder, the bass tracks in the bass folder, the guitars will go in the guitars folder, right? But that's not necessarily how I want to bus them, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my own bus system. So I've created tracks, put them under Mixbus. These folders are still routed to output to the master, and I don't want that. I want them to route to the bus, and then the bus is going to automatically, because it's in a folder, it's going to automatically route to my mix bus, and that mix bus is going to route out to the master. So you want to hover over this button, sends, receives. And by the way, if you're not using the same theme as me, let me quickly switch to the Reaper default. It's that one that says route. If I hold Alt on my keyboard and click, right, this track is no longer routing to the master. Click, Alt, Alt click, Alt click. Or you could right click and untick master send. Okay? So now, if I had sound or tracks in here with actual sound, if I pressed play right now, I would hear nothing. So now I'm going to remove the processing that I put on these. You can pin these tracks. So pin tracks to top of a range view. So no matter what you do where you scroll, you can always see your buses. Let's do a new project. Let's actually do this with a real track. So I found a real multi-track here from Cambridge MT. Okay, so we're not going to play any audio from it just in case we get in trouble, but yeah, the tempo's 55. Set my tempo to the tempo of the song, 55. Now this is good because it's like this typical like rock song, right, with all the usual elements. So I'm going to select all of my tracks. I've got 46 tracks to deal with, right? So I'm going to drag them in to Reaper. I'm going to say same time position on separate tracks. Okay, some of them are colored because it's been affected by my auto color rule, but you know, don't worry about that. Now look at this. We've got all of these tracks just sitting here, and they're all routed to the master. And if I wanted to, I could just get to work mixing, start doing levels, panning, processing. Of course, with a session like this, we're going to want to set things up a bit better. So I've got a template here where I've got my mix bus, and in my mix bus, I have reinsert, which is a send and return to my hardware mix bus chain. I'll probably do a video on how that works in the future. And I have 8 buses created here, and effects, and I'm going to put my effects sends on there, like my reverbs, delays, things like that. And we'll go into that in a bit. So let's import our session again. I've got all my 46 tracks. I'm dragging them in, same time position on separate tracks. Okay, here's all my tracks. And I'm going to now put them into folders and into buses. So these are the drums. Right click, move tracks to folder, new folder track. I'm going to call it drums. And we've got our color as well. This is a bass. There's only one bass track. I'm going to put it in a folder. or I could just route it directly to my bus in a minute, but I'm going to put it in a folder, bass, and go through and decide for your session what makes logical sense for the folders. Alright, so I've split these into folders now. Close these folders up. You can see logically what I've got going on here. Now I've made a decision to put acoustic in its own folder and electric in another, but I might choose to have them go to the same bus. Right? I've got all my keys here, and I've got lead vocals and backing vocals. Now I'm going to decide what buses they go to. So this one is drums bus, bass bus, acoustic bus, because I'm going to have my acoustic guitars go to its own bus. Now on my buses, I've chosen to put, well, two plugins. One of them is this really awesome, you've seen me use it quite a lot, this Blenheim Sound VU meter, which is free. It's completely free. And you can show the UI and the MCP. It's a really cool VU meter to have on each of your buses. And I've also put on each bus an instance of the UAD Studer A800, just for some warm tape saturation, some glue, and I might not need any compression on those buses as well. You can also put compressor on there, on each bus as well. And then I've got my effects, all of my effects sends as well. So there's one more thing we haven't done, which is we need to make sure that none of our audio tracks are directly sending out to the master. So I'm going to hold Alt and click, or I can select them all, right click and untick master send. And that will remove the master send for all of these. And now I'm going to send the output of each one to the bus that I want them to go to. So that's going to the drums bus. This is going to the bass bus. And this is sending to the acoustic bus. By the way, a better way to do this is probably just right-click send, right-click the routing button, go to sends, and just choose where you want it to go. Vocal bus here, right-click, sends, vocals backing bus. Things like reverbs, delays, and stuff like that. You usually don't want to just insert like a reverb directly onto the track. You probably want tracks to share the same reverb. That can also make the sound more cohesive. I've chosen to put all my effects here. So if I do Control T to create a track, and I'll put that here. And let's call this Lex, because I'm going to put my Lexicon reverb on here. Okay, so this is a track that just has reverb on it. And I'm going to send my snare to that reverb. So I can either right-click, route, send to my Lex channel, or I can simply drag it and route it there. And if you want to understand what's happening, you can just click the routing button. And here you can actually choose whether the output is post-fader and post-pan, or if that send is pre-fader, post-effects, or pre-fader, pre-effects. So effectively you can choose where the return from that reverb is going to be. Okay, usually post-fader is where I want it. Now I'm sure I'm not going to get into any trouble for just playing the snare off this thing. I'm pretty sure. So we can hear that we have a reverb. I can go in here and I can well, set the reverb up how I like it. Now, when you do this on your reverb plugin, whichever you're using, or your delay or whatever, make sure the mix is set to 100%. In this case, solo, because you want to have 100% of the effect on your send channel, but you want to control how much you're sending to it. So how do we do that? Well, if we go back into the sends, the routing for the track, for our snare, you can just set the level here, but the better way is to automate it. So click this one here, and again, in case you're not using the same theme as me, that's this button here, track envelopes. Click that, and you're going to get your envelopes window for the track, and these are automation envelopes. And I want to show the send volume for my send to Lex. So I'm going to click there, and you'll see this envelope has appeared. Now I can automate this send. So if I bring this down, I've got no reverb happening. You can see on the Lex channel, there's no signal. If I bring this up, I'm starting to get some reverb. And if I want the same level of reverb for the whole track, I can set it to where I want. Or I can automate it. So I've got no reverb here. And I can hold Control and click to create a node, Control and click to create another one, and I can automate it like this. You can hear the reverb gradually coming in. All right. Or you can draw it in by holding Control or Command if you're on a Mac, and drawing in your envelope. And this is how all automation envelopes work in Reaper. For example, the volume. If I press V, I've got the volume envelope for the track. That's how all automation envelopes work. Okay. I'm going to also put some reverb on my toms as well. So I'm going to take tom 1, send to my reverb, and tom 2, send to my reverb. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get in trouble for just playing back a snare and a couple of toms from this track. I hope not anyway. And we can hear. So our one track with reverb on is giving us reverb for as many tracks as we want. So that, I think that about covers it. We looked at creating buses, we talked about auto coloring, and we talked a little bit about sends. So thank you for watching. If you like this stuff, leave a comment, leave what you think. You can make suggestions to me for more Reaper stuff. I've been using Reaper for 15 years, I think even more. I've made multiple complete full albums. So if there's any other topic you want me to cover, let me know. And thanks for watching.